Adding and applying materials to our three-dimensional objects is a critical part of the rendering and texturing stage of 3D artwork. In this video, we're going to discuss how we apply materials and the importance of the material group inside the shader tree. As you can see in my three-dimensional scene here, I have a very basic scene, just a cone, a cube, and a cylinder, or a sphere down here at the bottom. And all three of these objects are sitting on a very simple two-dimensional ground plane. Now, what I want to do here, before we get started, is really kind of talk about the shader tree. So if you look over here, I'm in the shader tree tab, and I have the render section of the shader tree opened and expanded. Inside the render section of the shader tree, at the very bottom is this guy right here, the base material. The base material is the one material in the entire shader tree that's going to influence everything in the scene. So if I change the base material, any one of these channels found in the Properties tab in the base material, it's going to affect everything in the scene. For example, if we change the diffuse color, let's make it do a nice, lovely shade of green. There we go. And you can see that that change to the base material is affecting everything in our three-dimensional scene. So the cone, the cube, and the sphere are now being influenced by the base material. Well, I don't want everything to be green in the scene. Maybe I just want to have the two-dimensional ground plane be green. I want to have each one of these shapes be a different color. In order to do that, we need to start with a selection. We need to physically select the polygons that we want to change the color for. So in my polygonal selection set, I'm going to double click and select on the cone first. As you can see here, I select the cone. And if we hit the M key, M for material, it's going to bring open the polygon set material dialog box. And let's give this guy a name. So we're going to name our material group. And if we click on the color option, let's give it, bright magenta color. There we go. And hit OK. Now, once we hit OK, you can immediately see that the cone is now being shaded a different color based off of the parameters that we just set. If we explore our shader tree, we have a new little item that's popped up in our shader tree. As you can see here, it says cone, and then in parentheses, it says material. This is what's classified as a material group. If we open up our material group, we can see that it has its own material. This material is driving how the selected polygons, the cone, are going to be rendered. And it's driving only the cones only the polygons in the cone. The base material is shading everything except the cone right now, except the cone. So think of material groups as ways to pull out certain objects from the base material. The base is going to shade everything. Material groups are only going to shade very selected polygons in our scene. Let's add another one. So back to polygonal selection mode. I'm going to double click on my cube and hit the M key once again. And there it is. Let's just call this cube, and let's give it another really bright primary color like yellow. There we go. And now you can see that just the cube is getting shaded yellow. Over here in the shader tree again, we have a new material group. There it is. Here's the new material inside that group. And if we explore its properties, here it is, diffuse color. Now, the great thing about working with materials is that nothing is set in stone. We can always go back and change things. So maybe I want my cube to be, blue. And there it is. So these channels are live. Nothing's ever set in stone. We can always go back and make changes. Let's do it one more time. Polygonal selection set. Double click on the sphere. Hit the M key. There it is. And let's call this sphere. And how about we make this guy yellow? There we go. And hit OK. So adding materials is a very quick way of dividing out all the different colors of the different materials inside of our scene. Now, when you get more into advanced materialing, you're going to find that you're not going to be relying on the diffuse color channel alone to make your final renders. You're going to be adding a ton of elements inside this material group, including texture maps, procedurals. A number of different elements can be inserted inside of material groups on top of just standard materials. So we're going to be looking at some other advanced techniques to make our materials be a little bit more custom. Right now, we're just kind of playing around with the diffuse color. One other thing, this is kind of cool. We can mix and match materials on one object. So maybe I want to have a couple racing stripes on my sphere here. So by selecting those polygons and hitting M, we can now change this to be, let's call it red. And let's give it a color. There we go. So we can mix and match, which is pretty cool. We're not limited to having one material per object. This is on a per polygon basis. So we can, in theory, we can have as many materials as there are polygons in the scene. So that's materials and how we apply and use them in our 3D renders.